Hello, hello, and good evening. I hope everybody's had a wonderful day. It's been a beautiful day out here on the East Coast, even though they were calling for rain. I am excited to be back on a Wednesday live because it's the only normal thing that's happened in my week so far. Anyway, I am just wanted a matter of housekeeping before we begin our talk about vitamin B12 tonight. Is we've got a lovely group together for our transform 10 weeks to transform MS. If you'd like to be a part of that, if you've been thinking about it, just a reminder that the early bird pricing ends tonight at midnight. So if you haven't made a decision yet, either do so or book a call. And I'm happy to talk to you about the program if you're not sure. If you're a good fit for it, we'd love to have you. And to those of you who are registered, I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited about this program. Anyway, tonight we want to talk about B12. And it seems to be a theme this week. I'm faced with B12 deficiency at every turn, it seems, and including this evening. Like at 5:30, I was talking to a young man who had just been diagnosed with MS and found out that his B12 were some of the lowest numbers that I've ever seen. So let's start by just looking at B12. B12 is like a super simple water soluble B vitamin. The clinical name for B12 is cobalamin. So you may hear it used in, there are three cofactors or three types of B12: cyanocobalamin, hydroxocobalamin, and methyl or methylcobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is the B12 that you would get at your family doctor's. It's like a shot in the arm. It's the least active form. Hydroxocobalamin is more metabolically active, but the one that's neurologically active is the methyl or methylcobalamin. And the neurologically active becomes important because vitamin, because not only is it important in multiple sclerosis, but B12 is also B12 deficiency is kind of like a standalone condition on its own. So there's always been controversy. They say controversy. I don't know if I would use the word controversy about vitamin B12 deficiency in multiple sclerosis because it's also associated with pernicious and macrocytic anemia. Yeah, but there's a marked similarity between the presentation of those two very different conditions. But at the end of the day, they both share some inflammatory and neurodegenerative characteristics. So those are two words that we're really familiar with, right? When we talk about multiple sclerosis naturally, because we've got that inappropriate, misdirected immune response causing inflammation that's directed towards the brain, and that's the neurodegeneration. So you've got our attention twice there. And because the similarities for both are the same in clinic as well as on MRI, sometimes it's hard to differentiate between them in the doctor's office. Suffice it to say that there is a huge relationship between vitamin B12 deficiency and multiple sclerosis. And low or decreased vitamin B12 is actually very common in MS. And it's something that I see all the time and I test for all the time. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Low B12 is also associated with elevated homocysteine. And homocysteine is another inflammatory marker. And it's associated with decreased DNA synthesis. So now we're sort of seeing how that vitamin B12 is sort of trickling into problems with our DNA. So let's talk about the role of vitamin B12 and what it does. So first of all, it's a key player in myelin synthesis and the stability of the myelin. So if we've got a deficiency there, it could be considered a demyelinating situation. It's an important immunomodulator. It plays a huge role in intracellular energy production. So we can start to picture some of the symptoms that are going to come out of this. It's incredibly important as a neuroprotective vitamin and just optimizing neuronal function in general. And it's essential for DNA synthesis, and it also helps to maintain the integrity or even restore the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. And remember, so leaky brain, leaky gut. So if we've got a leaky gut, and we know that everybody who has MS does have a leaky gut, then there's also a leaky blood-brain barrier going on, and vitamin B12 can help to correct that. So let's talk about typical symptoms of B12 deficiency. And you're going to go, ah. So the first ones that I think of, first of all, fatigue. Secondly, numbness and tingling in the extremities. Muscle weakness, gait problems, loss of balance, anxiety, depression, mood stuff. So you can see why vitamin B12 deficiency actually mimics MS, and why we need to explore that as part of your overall quest for health, right? Vitamin B12 should always be looked at, and because the deficiency can aggravate MS symptoms or stand in the way of a good recovery, and we don't want that to happen. So I want to talk about how we actually end up in a vitamin D deficient state. And I've got two words for you there: diet and digestion. So the best sources of B12 are animal products. So these would be animal meat, fish, milk, cheese, and eggs. Those are by far and away the best sources of B12. So there are plant-based sources, but they are minuscule in comparison to the animal-based products. And you can see that, I mean, when we're trying to reduce the amount of meat, we're trying we should be avoiding dairy. Some people are avoiding eggs. That vitamin B12 deficiency is plausible just by doing some dietary changes. So beyond diet, it's also about digestion and malabsorption specifically. So malabsorption happens secondary to low stomach acid, just suboptimal digestion in general. And don't forget, that's most of the population now. If we had a lot better digestion as a culture, we'd have a lot less sickness. So we've got malabsorption happening through the gut. So I want to talk to you about how you can detect and correct a B12 deficiency. And first of all, it is a very, very easy test to be done at your family doctor's. So it's just it can be part of a regular blood panel. It's fairly inexpensive. And, if your doctor needs convincing, you can just tell him about the parallels between vitamin D deficiency and multiple sclerosis. Um, Many people that I work with come back, like after supplementing for a while, come back with high vitamin B12 because there's a discrepancy right now between sort of the standard old lab results and the newer, better understood functional medicine values. So, the standard lab values are sort of ish, depends on the lab, but 150 to 500, 600. And I find the best results in people that are at least 600. Ideally, I want to see that number around 1,000 or even 1,200. So that's going to make your family doctor go, yikes, that's too much vitamin D. Stop your supplementation. Well, just know that that's not true. You can keep supplementing at that. And the whole thing there is normal, like a normal lab value, doesn't necessarily mean healthy levels or optimal levels. So this is once again where we're talking about what's normal or accepted as normal versus what's accepted in the best interest of optimal health. So it's that simple. It's a blood test from your family doctor, or your naturopathic doctor, because especially in Ontario and in a lot of areas, your naturopathic doctor can requisition that as well. Now, traditionally, B12 replacement has been administered through intramuscular injection, either in the arm or in the thigh. And the and guess why? That's because of the digestive issue, right? Now we've also got some other clever technologies. So I actually haven't seen any data comparing them, but sublingual, so under the tongue, bypasses digestion by being absorbed by all those veins that are underneath the tongue. So there's a lot of sublingual lozenges that you can get your vitamin B12 from. And there's also, and this is a favorite of mine, liposomal B12. And that just means it gets absorbed through a liposome, and it's either gets absorbed directly in the mouth or it bypasses the whole stomach acid issue. So it's very interesting that vitamin B12 and multiple sclerosis share so many symptoms. And that is why it's absolutely vital that if you have been diagnosed with MS, that you know what your B12 levels are, and then to work with somebody who can help you supplement them, supplement and get you into a place that's good for you. I guess ultimately I would still prefer the B12 injections, but you have to get that custom compounded. So if you have a naturopath they can requisition a custom compounded B12 for you, and teach you how to self-administer, or you can go to their office and get the injections as well. So I want you to, that's your homework for today, is to find out what your B12 levels are, and then work with methylcobalamin. Remember, methyl or methyl, that is the neurologically active one. I'm going to swing over here. I'd like you to drop into the chat and let me know any of your experiences with B12. And hi, Olivet in Michigan. Hey, Renee. William von Glastetter.
Click on that.
Oh, yes, of course. And so we've got a couple of questions here. William, some tests can give false results. I'm sure you'll mention this, though. Yes, some tests can give false results. I, I, don't have a lot of problems with William. Are you talking with just regular labs, or are you talking special lab testing? If you wouldn't mind putting that in there. And Renee, if a person supplements with the cyano version of B12, will they end up with a misleading blood test? It will show an increase in the B12, but don't forget the B12 testing doesn't differentiate between cyano, hydroxyl, and methylcobalamin. And it's just the methylcobalamin that is neurologically active. So you might find that you have improved energy with the cyanocobalamin, but it's not, but that's sort of more a metabolic cellular energy thing than having impacts on at the neurological level. And do we have any, William, did you want to give me more specifics on the testing that you're talking about with regard to B12? Okay then. Well, that was a simple but I think pretty vital Wednesday Live for us, understanding how vital B12 is as a neuroprotector, an immunomodulator, a blood-brain barrier protector, a DNA protector, and it's inexpensive. I was taking a very high amount of B complex from my naturopath. I have backed off that after a few bottles. I read you can have numbness and similar symptoms with too much bees too. Is it possible to get too much of the bees? I was thinking they were water soluble. Is that William?
I don't have that here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it just says Facebook user.
Laura Caldwell.
Oh, Laura Caldwell. Hi, Laura. You know what? I've never had a problem with being symptomatic from too much bees, but that may just because I don't I don't prescribe like incredibly overwhelming levels of B vitamins to my patients, but they are water soluble, so you would think that they wouldn't hang around as much. And I'm sorry, I don't have experience with that because I don't prescribe huge amounts of B vitamins. Holly Polacek, do you recommend a specific product and how often would you test it? Every 6 months? So that's a great question, Holly. I'm not affiliated with any products. I look more for the delivery mechanism. So a custom compounded injectable intramuscular B12 methylcobalamin would be my first preference. A liposomal B12 would be my second preference. And then a sublingual would be my third preference. Sorry, I walked away. I don't recall the details. Okay, William, you know what? I'm going to look into that and I'm going to post it in the group, okay? So I haven't had any bad experience with false. I assume you're talking false positives or false negatives, but I'm going to look into that for you and I'll post it in the group, okay? So there you go. That's our simple but vital message for today. I hope to talk to you soon and have a good evening.